Number 2 issue, law and order. But not the law and order that you and I think the law and order. Not the security law and order. My second biggest challenge is adhering to the rules of the game. That's law and order. For the business people, that's law and order. Which means what? If there is a rule at the customs level which says goods can be imported at this value with these rates, then you are hoping that everybody is adhering by that rule. But often in this country, the business model is sales tax evasion. The business model is customs evasion. That is the business model that most of the honest, upright business people in this country are competing against. So if 50% of the formal economy is adhering to the rules, and 50% of the economy, the so-called people who then hide themselves behind a word called SME, हम तो छोटे लोग हैं, क्योंकि छोटा कह के आप इस्लामाबाद जाके बहुत सिंपैथी ले लेते हैं. वो छोटे नहीं होते. They are smugglers. But suddenly a smuggler is called a businessman here. And a lot of people support those guys in this country. Now, you compete against that law and order. You compete against it every day. It takes up 50% of your time. You go to Islamabad 50% of the time because you want law and order. That's the law and order for the businessman. Because the guy who's trying to kidnap you or the guy who's trying to snatch from you, you can take some kind of precaution against that. Brazil did it. Mexico did it. So we'll just have to learn to live with that. But what we cannot live with as a business community is living with a two-edged, two-system in one economy approach for too long. That makes it tough. It makes it really hard. That keeps me up at night. Energy keeps me up at night. And the second thing, who is trying to come into our market by cheating? Guess who helps? Who does the CEO, the entrepreneur, turn to? He turns to the CFO. What do we do? What do we do? How do we make sure this law is governed? Because you guys are taught law as well. I'm not going to hire lawyers to do that. I rely on the CFO. I rely on our chartered accountants to be a team that helps us beat these guys. Help us catch these guys in a role of business development. So I always say to the chartered accountant and CFOs with us in our group, you are the business development guys. You protect the business, you grow the business. So the second issue is law and order. Third issue is in this country what I call capacity. Capacity at the human level, my level, capacity at your level, capacity at the government level, at the society level. Capacity, intellectual capacity, integrity. It's very critical. It keeps me up at night. The one thing that I found about human beings in Pakistan especially, but I think it's globally, one thing that is predictable about a human being is that he is unpredictable. It's really tough. One day you get up and you're sitting around 3 people and you've made a consensus that that's how we're going to approach a situation. And you find it hard. So what do? You need to have networking of relationships so deep where you can create this capacity of trust, capacity of working with each other, capacity of knowing that person inside out. That's what I do. I try to figure out who are we working with. Do I really trust them? Do they have the capacity that I think they have? Are they going to deliver? Guess who I turn to for help? The CFO. I want our team below him to help cultivate these relations. And it doesn't come naturally to chartered accountants to have interpersonal skills for some reason. It's important. If you don't have interpersonal skills of knowing the human being, then you're not going to be very helpful. You're not going to be the guy who's going to make CEO one day. You'll be that CFO or that chartered accountant who will get stuck at CFO. The CEO needs this, the human resource side. And it's really, really critical. It actually is one thing that I wish, as a nation we could improve. I asked a person, just on a side note, this lady doctor came to my house one night for a dinner. And she works in the field of genetics. And I asked her, tell me, how a human being, one generation to the other, how much does gene play a role in the way that person will behave, and how much does environment play a role in suppressing or cultivating that personality? She says, well, I'm a genetics person, so I'm going to be a lot more on the genetic side than you'd like me to be at. So I said, no, give me a percentage. And she said 80-20. 80% genes, 20% environment. Imagine we have so little room to deal with. We have to create the environment around human beings that they behave in the way that is your culture. It is the way that you want them to behave. It can be at the nation level, at the company level, at a family level. So hence we school our children, we educate our management, we try to create capacity at the government level. Why? Because genes are that much more powerful. So I'm reminded by my father a lot, look, you come from a feudal background, so be careful. This argument, you're taking it too far. But point is very well made. That this is something that is very powerful, and this is something that we deal with. Having conveyed all of this to you, this is, I think, Saquib, wins and waves in the economic scenario. In my opinion, these are the situations in which we have to work. So how do we work? How does Atlas work, for example? I can give you, there are no right or wrong answers, but I can tell you over the period of time, we have come to view things in a certain way, how we are. Dr. Saab, this is your chart just in a bar. But the only thing I will add here is, look at the decade of development. That was the era when entrepreneurship was encouraged by a private-public partnership. Ghulam Farooq Saab was given the mandate by the government, okay, look, 80% of the projects you can fund, 20% the entrepreneur will fund. 22 families emerged during that era, the decade of development. It was the original private-public partnership, which years later, World Bank, etc., gave Maggie Thatcher the credit for. No, Pakistan pioneered public-private partnership. And we did it very successfully. The only thing we didn't do was we didn't put regulatory authorities, which allowed monopolies to get created. And hence, they could not withstand the pressure when the pressure came. And we got soaked up in the political wave of Bhutto nationalism. Otherwise, we were way ahead. The other thing that you will see is that number of government changes and disasters our country's gone through. We somehow, Dr. Saab, we continue to be on that 5%. So resilience is unbelievable. This is the resilience. We have resilience. I think I've talked about a lot of this stuff. That, there are positives, there are negatives. Evolving economic scenario, the liquidity crisis, I totally agree. I think there's going to be a crisis in the next 2-3 years that the world will have to deal with. Last time, 2008, the world's crisis wasn't the reason we fell. We fell because of our own mismanagement at that time. But I think this time round, it's a tough crisis that we will handle. However, I think it's possible to get through this too. But the key thing here is that whatever happens in the world, the key word here is at the firm level, I think you've got to change from a control role environment much more to a planning and management role. You cannot just start the year, budget, control, this is it. This is how we're going to be. I think you guys use the word flexible budgeting, but I think that's not even good enough. It's got to be planning and management at an active level.